All right, here we are. We're doing another Q&A session here, Southwest Toyota in Lawton. These guys take care of me. Justin Rogers, general manager here, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, active military base. And we're going to have a Q&A session here in a little bit. People are starting to show up. They got a lot of different lakes around this area, so hopefully we can educate and, you know, at the very least, entertain some of the Army, military, Marine families in the Fort Sill area here. So we're about to get this thing going.
My question is in our home lake, where do the bass go after spawn when it's a milfoil filled lake?
Yeah, so the question is, where do the bass go after they spawn shallow on our lakes that have milfoil, which is underwater vegetation? Josh, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, that's really not my style. That's your deal.
Yeah.
I'm more out in the middle of the lake type of guy, but I know where they go. They go right in the middle of that stuff.
Yep.
You know, that's why a lot of times this time of year, early morning and late in the evening, that's when you catch your fish because they're out and about. They're roaming around. They're not tucked down in there. When that sun gets high, they get in the thickest cover they can find or in a brush pile or whatever. So
Yeah,
you gotta punch it basically. And that, you know, a lot of patience.
So we're on the tail end of spring right now, going into summer. I always categorize, you know, whenever I go to a new lake, whether we're going out to Latonka tomorrow or if I'm going to Lake Gunnersville with grass and milfoil, just think about in the wintertime and the summertime, fish like to go deep. So towards the middle of the lake. I'm talking, you know, anywhere from 10 feet all the way out to 25, almost 30 feet of water sometimes. So that's summertime and wintertime. Then you have spring and fall, and those fish like to get shallow. So you're talking about in the springtime, you know, the fish spawn up on the bank. A lot of times we could see them in the holes of the milfoil. When they get done spawning, which is typically late April, about the time now, the fish start migrating, like Josh says, out towards the middle of the lake. So when you have a milfoil lake, which is underwater vegetation along some of those flats along the bank, what I like to do is try to find the points of the underwater vegetation. So the points of the milfoil, holes in the milfoil. Essentially what you want to do is act like it's a lake that, you know, essentially what you want to do is think of those milfoil patches and points and flats, just like you would just a regular rocky bank. So when we think rocky bank, we're thinking points, any irregular features in the grass will help you a long way. What you want to stay away from are those long stretches of grass lines where nothing is different, where it all looks the same. You want to find those long stretches of milfoil grass lines where that little point of it sticks out. And essentially, bass are just like, and you know this, bass are just like cats, you know, hanging behind a couch when, you know, something gets jigged, a little, you know, that little feather toy that we always play with cats. You know, they're always on the points of the edge of that chair. Same with the bass. Those are ambush points. So when they're done spawning up in those shallower flat areas, they start to move out deeper. You know, they're spawning there in 4 to 6 feet of water. They'll start to move out towards those points of the milfoil in that 12, 15, 17 foot range. And anything from a top water. To be honest with you, if I was going out right now and we were fishing tomorrow, I'd probably take a 1 or 1.5 ounce punching rig, which is just a regular Texas rig, and a creature bait with braided line and kind of flip the edge of those grass points like that. It's an excellent way to catch them in the post-spawn phase, especially if there's bluegill around. We all love catching bluegill. Yes, this is the time of year where the bluegill start to spawn, and the bass know that, so they'll be, you know, ambushing prey in and around those grassy spots. But stay away from those just plain, boring-looking grassy stretches out there on Letra. Try to find the points or the isolated patches, the patches the size of your bass boat, the patches the size of your little kayak or whatever you're fishing out of, isolated patches. And always look for clues of life with your electronics or your eyeballs. You know, the egrets and the blue herons and the things like that are eyeing these areas just like the bass are. So look for those points.
Just like the heavy hitters were just in Florida.
Yeah.
Miles and miles and miles of hydrilla.
Yep.
And when they came across I don't even know what type of grass it is, a grass clump, and they threw that frog over there would be a fish on it a lot of times. And a lot of those guys figured that out. And that's why, obviously, some of them did better than others. But it was just something different in the hydrilla.
Something different.
Just a different type of grass growing. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, just a little half moon shape in the grass. I mean, that's just enough to harbor that cat to ambush a piece of, plastic or whopper plop or whatever it is. So always look for those irregular features in those grass lines. Can be tough, but it can be really rewarding. The other thing to add to that is bass this time of year like to group up together. So if you do get one bite fishing from the bank, fishing out of your kayak or whatever it is, chances are there are more than one bass sitting there. So make repetitive casts. That after you take that picture, post it on Instagram or Facebook, let her go, and I'm sure there's going to be another one in that same area.
2 or more is a pattern.
Absolutely.
Or 3 hours, 4 hours later.
Yeah.
I went, just fishing at a pond just a few days ago, and it was a pond.
Yep.
But they were in clumps of grass, and I was throwing a frog, and that's where I got all my bites. They would come. I could watch them. I could see the swirl come out from under the grass, and they would hammer it.
That's awesome.
Caught 4 or 5 of them in just a short time on my hollow body frog.
That's cool. Grab you a bag, a towel, and get one of those swim baits, would you? You'll find one in there, yeah. All right, let's go with the young gentleman with the glasses on his hat up here. We got a free rod candidate here, Josh. How you doing? What's your name?
My name's Clayton Shelter.
Clayton?
Clayton, yeah.
Clayton, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I fish tournaments up in West Texas.
Yep.
And we fish on lake like Possum Kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Would my leader line, is that affecting how I throw a shaky head a lot. Is that affecting the bite of it?
Yes. Yeah. So the question is, Clayton is from West Texas. Josh and I spent a lot of time fishing in West Texas, Possum Kingdom Reservoir, which is a lot like these lakes right over here. The question is, does my leader line size affect my lure? So what we're talking about is a spinning rod setup. And what we use is braided line on the spinning rod and reel. And then we have a 6 to 9 foot leader, which is fluorocarbon. A lot of times we'll use 8 and 10 pound test. Now, if you're one of those guys who doesn't care and ties a 15 or 20 pound fluorocarbon to that finesse presentation, you're really restricting the action of that lure. And when you start talking about big bass that we all like catching, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13 pounders, those fish have been around for 15 plus years, and they know the difference between a 17 pound test or a 20 pound test, a lot thicker, and the 6, 8, and 10 pound test. So always go with the lightest line possible with the spinning rod with a shaky head setup, which is just a soft finesse plastic worm. Go with the lightest line possible. Being from California, I used to fish only 6 pound test line. I mean, that's like crappie line. And when I came to Texas, I quickly realized I was getting a lot of bites, but I wasn't landing a lot of these fish because of all the cover, the grass out here, all the wood down there on PK. So I upped it to 8 and 10 pound test. So 8 and 10 is just about the sweet spot for a spinning setup. And you got to think, when a fish is sitting there and it's real slow moving like a shaky head soft plastic worm, the more you shake it, the more action you have. The lighter the line, the smaller the diameter, and the more action you're going to have out of that artificial lure. So definitely go with, that 8 and 10 pound test. Don't ever go more than 12 pound test unless you're throwing it deep into those grass patches or isolated pieces of timber. So yes, it does affect your shaky head. And what are you currently using?
We're using 12 pound test.
Like 12 pound?
We thought it might be a little too heavy.
But It's a little heavy. So try downsizing to 8 and 10 pound tests, and you'll start to get more bites. But think about when you do, you're a tournament angler, you understand just about when you're going to get a bite. That spot looks good. I better cast in there. When you get that bite, visualize where you're going to move that fish to get it to the boat. If there's a tree right there, if there's a grass patch right there, if there's a dock right there, when you get that bite, try as hard as you can to maneuver that fish away from that cover. And obviously, the lighter the line you go, the more challenging that's going to be. But that's what makes it fun. You got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, not only does it help the presentation of the lure, but those fish can see that line.
Yes.
I've learned that. Well, I learned it years ago. But
they can feel that line as well.
Yeah.
They feel it vibrating.
So I know a trout guide on the White River in Arkansas, and he has to use 2 pound tests in the day. But at night, he can use 20 pound tests. So I was in Idaho struggling for 18 straight days. Only caught a couple good ones, and I was using 20-pound tests like I did the year before. It didn't matter, but last year it mattered. I finally had enough. I went an hour into town and I bought 2-pound test line, 4-pound test line, and 6-pound test line. Mike Brown was actually with me during this time. He came up there.
Who?
Yeah, I figured this out after the fact. So after days and days of these fish, seeing my lure and not eating, I went and bought 2-pound test. And the first 4 fish I threw at on the same schools I was fishing bit. Now, I didn't catch any of them because it's 2-pound test line, right? And I ended up missing probably 30 more before I finally caught one on 2-pound test line. I ended up catching 2 over 6 on 2-pound test line, but I figured out the heaviest you could possibly go was 6. And they didn't bite as much with the 6 as they did with the 2. But the 2 is next to impossible to catch. You know, you hook a fish, you can't set the hook, and it takes 10 minutes to get in. So the 6-pound test is probably the perfect, you know, especially for PK. That lake can get super, super clear. I was using a 30-pound braid to a leader. So I don't know if that matters. Get a little bit better hook set way on out there when the majority of that pressure is on that braid, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, as low as you can go and not break off 100 times. That's where I would be.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out. Like, where was it too much, or where was it too little, where I'd break off on every fish I caught?
I would somewhere between 6 and 10-pound tests on PKs.
8's a really good sweet spot. Yeah, Seagar Tatsu is excellent stuff. Clayton, go grab your rod, brother. Good job. All right, let's go to the back. Bass Pro hat, baby blue Bass Pro hat. How you doing, big fella? What's your name?
Ethan.
Ethan? What you got for us?
What do you think is better to fish, lakes or ponds?
Yeah, so the question is, what do you think is better to fish, lakes or ponds?
So it depends how the pond is managed. It depends how big the pond is, you know. Smaller ponds require a lot of work. Fish are prolific spawners for the most part, bass. You have to keep those fish caught out. And say a 1-acre pond, that pond isn't going to be able to maintain a certain amount of bait to grow these fish really big. I have friends that grow 12 to 14-pound bass in their little 1 to 10-acre ponds, but every single year they put crawfish in them. Every single year they hire a guy to bring shad. So I don't know. What was the question? Where was I going with that?
Yeah. What's better to fish, ponds or lakes?
Okay. I prefer lakes personally because you never know what that next fish is going to be, right?
Yeah.
It could be a 13, 14 pounder, which in a pond, you pretty much know what you got for the most part. So yeah, I prefer lakes.
Ethan, how old are you?
13.
13. Dude, you're a big 13. You should be playing ball, not fishing. So you're wearing Crocs. You know, walking around a pond, you're dealing with ticks, mosquitoes, and all that. But at 13 years old, you don't care. All you want to do is catch a fish. When I was 13, I used to pond hop all the time. And that's where I learned like the basics of fishing. My favorite lure was just a fluke, a soft plastic fluke, which is a bait fish. It's soft plastic. I love like the watermelon reds, anything that would represent a bluegill. They love eating bluegills in ponds. You know, most ponds don't have shad in them, which is what big lakes offer. But walking around a pond is one of the best ways to learn the basics of fishing. You know, when you see that little lay down, when you're walking up to, you know, when you're walking the pond, you see that lay down and there's a shade and it's just a beautiful looking lay down. And you're thinking, man, there's got to be a bass in there. And when you make that cast over there and you're rewarded with a bite, things start to click and you start to learn more and more about bass behavior. So at 13 years old, I would say stick with the ponds. You got plenty of them around here. Maybe you talk to one of the sergeant majors around here and ask them if you could hop on base. I hear there's some good ones over there. But my advice to you is to stick with the ponds, and then we'll graduate to either kayak or mom could buy you a boat maybe for Christmas, and then graduate to the lakes. But again, learn the basics. What lures work? What lures don't work? And one of the biggest tips I can give you when you're pond fishing, you're on 2 feet, you're walking along the pond. Most people, when they go to a pond, you know there's bass in there. Most people will walk up to the bank, the water's edge, and cast to the middle of the pond. Always. That's what we always want. We always want to make the furthest cast away. But my advice to you when you're pond fishing, a lot of times the bass will relate just to the shoreline cover. What I like to do when I'm walking to a pond is walk a cast length away from where the water line is and start casting to the bank that in 5 minutes your feet will be at. So always sneak up. It's kind of like hunting. You'll sneak up depending on the size of the pond and just cast right in front of you. Don't let the fish see you. Don't make a lot of commotion, a lot of noise. And you'll start to notice a lot of fish just hang out shallow up along the bank line. So don't cast out to the middle. You can do that, but cast as you're walking up to the pond right to where that edge is. And a lot of times when you're standing on the pond's edge, make the cast to the right and to the left instead of out in the middle of the pond. They'll be relating to all the little stick-ups. Sometimes there's reeds, that one little rock that sticks out right there, just in 2 feet of water, a foot of water. Throw a fluke or a soft plastic lure in there, fish it real slow, and you'll be surprised, that the guy that's casting out to the middle of the pond, he's casting past where most of the fish are hanging out. And the other thing too is if there's, let's say there's a dominant south wind and we're on the south side of the pond, let's go to the north side where the wind is kind of crashing on that bank, causing a disturbance, moving bait fish, uprooting, crawfish and things like that. So always want to fish kind of the more windy, choppier side of the pond, and just right there at your feet is where most of the bass will be hanging out.
I think just about everyone started off pond fishing.
Yeah.
I didn't have my first boat till I was 19.
Yeah.
Pond fishing, That's where I learned to get a backlash out because I was always
always learning.
Always in the trees, behind not paying attention.
Yeah. Good stuff. Go get you a rod, man. Okay. Thank you. Let's go with the little one over here. This is awesome. How are you doing? What's your name? Zayler? Zyler. Very cool name.
What is the best way to catch bass?
Yes. What is the best way to catch bass? And this goes to that first question. It kind of goes with that first question, but we'll add a little bit color to that. Again, bass are opportunistic feeders where, just like that cat we were talking about, a lot of times they'll swim along the bank lines of these ponds and things. Anything that moves, they're going to get interested in, because bigger fish eat smaller fish, and even bigger fish eat that big fish. Just like in the ocean, our lakes and our ponds are the same way. So any little movement or disturbance is very appealing to a bass. So very basic lures like a spinnerbait or a crankbait. Everyone's got them. Bass Pro Shops has them. Heck, Walmart's even got these spinnerbaits and crankbaits. Anything kind of moving that looks just like a small fish, bigger fish will want to see that, investigate it, and put it in their mouth. So start with your basic lures like spinnerbaits, crankbaits, and soft plastic worms.
I personally like getting a bobber with some crappie minnows.
Now you're talking.
Throw out there.
Yeah, little
let
minnows.
the minnow do the work.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the most fun, right?
It is.
Just watching bobbers go under.
Have you ever seen a bobber go under? It's fun, right? You never know what you have. Very cool.
You don't.
Yeah. I'm going to hand pick a spinning rod for you, okay? Great question. In the back over there, orange sunglasses. You got your point up? Yep. How old are you? 18? Ineligible. You look 18. You're ineligible for a rod. What's your name?
Parker.
Parker.
What would you say is the biggest or most effective way to catch big bass or even double-digit bass?
So now you're talking Josh. How many 10-pounders have you caught to date?
280.
280 10-pound bass, dude. I've got like 6, 7. That's insane.
So obviously learning your electronics is how I did it. That's not the only way, right? This guy's mastered the big bait technique with no electronics. I mean, you didn't start using quarter face and sonar until a couple years ago.
Followed the wind, yeah.
Yeah, and he was kind of forced into it. But number one, I guess, is the electronics. I guess number one would be fishing where they live.
There you go.
Right? The reason I'm so successful, I know the electronics, right? But I'm fishing the best lakes in the United States.
Josh drives 6 hours from his home just to chase down one 10-pounder.
Yeah, but I don't come right back home. I stay the night and stay a few nights. So yeah, I drive literally from Tulsa to Texas to the best couple lakes around
In the world.
I mean, you guys probably live close to here. which you're only about 3 hours from Ivy from here, I believe.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah, so I would be spending every possible chance I get at Ivy. But number one, just learn your electronics, especially in this day and age. That's the future. And you want to be one of the first guys doing it because these fish are just going to get smarter, And luckily, I that's how I made my name. I was doing it before anyone. So I caught these fish when they were easy to be caught. Right now, they're getting harder and harder.
Yeah, so what's the best way to catch a 10-pound plus bass or bigger? The answer is very simple. You fish for them. And what I mean by that is most lures, when you go into a Bass Pro Shops, most lures are in the 2 to 4 inch size range. And rightfully so. Most of the forage out on the lakes and ponds we fish are 2 to 4 inches. We're talking bluegill and smaller. We're talking shad. We're talking crawfish, baby crappie. And so most of the forage being that small appeals to a 2-pounder, a 3-pounder, a 4-pounder, and occasionally a 10-pound plus bass. Now, you guys have 10-pounders in this area. You just have to fish for them. And in simple terms, bigger baits equals bigger bass. And that's kind of my specialty, is fishing 6, 7, 8, and 9-inch baits that, a 2 and 3-pounder may nip at, just curiously. But when you're talking 10-pound plus fish, they want to expend the least amount of energy as possible to eat the biggest thing that provides the most nutrients and energy for that fish. I brought some 6 and 7-inch swim baits here. That's my bread and butter. 6 and 7-inch range is more appealing to 8+ pound fish than that small little shaky headed worm we talked about. And yes, it can be done. I know crappie guys who've accidentally caught 12 and 13-pound bass on a micro 1-inch lure, but it's not going to happen every day. Just know when you upsize the 7, 8, and 9-inch swim baits that your bites will significantly go down as far as numbers. You may only get, when you're throwing that big swim bait, 7-inch swim bait, you may only get 2 to 3 bites a day, but all of them are going to be magnums. So bigger the bait, the bigger the bass, in simple terms. And again, what you want to key in on is windy points. If you go to a lake that's got a dam on it, so a man-made lake, for whatever reason, I usually target points in the faces of the dams themselves. For whatever reason, if you're fishing within sight of the dam, that typically means you're fishing the deepest area of the lake. And big fish love that deeper, clearer water. They could ambush prey a lot easier, especially if the wind is blowing. So my advice is to upsize 7, 8, 9-inch lures. They're a lot of fun to catch. When you get a bite, you know it. I mean, it's not a little worm bite where you're having to check it. Oh, was that a bite? I don't know. I mean, they absolutely demolish those big swim baits like that. That or a big spoon. But bigger lures, chase the wind, fish really obvious, single docks, a single point, and do it with inside of a dam.
Okay.
And the bigger fish are harder to catch. The
They
clearer
are.
the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dirtier the water, the better.
Yeah.
Because you can fake them out.
Yeah.
They got eyeballs this big. I don't know if they're just smarter, they can see better, but
Grab you one of those bigger rods there. Throw those swim baits. Good job, Parker. Right down the center there. Josh said that was enthusiastic. You look like an enthusiastic dude. Yeah.
Ooh.
What's your name?
My name is Austin.
Austin?
Yes.
Excellent.
You ready for this?
I'm so
Okay.
Hold on. Let me get my seatbelt on.
Yeah, you might want to.
Yeah.
So most of us fish for fun.
Yeah.
Does it ever feel like work as a pro?
Yeah. Hey, that's a great question. Austin says, hey, most of us fish for fun. And I can't remember the last time I fished for fun. I'm actually proud of the Gilchrist Automotive sponsor, the Bass Pro Shops, Nitro Mercury, blah, blah, blah sponsor. I'm proud to work with these companies. But in this day and age, when I'm competing out there, it is all business. It is absolutely work. I was having a chat with one of our awesome Marines out here just a little bit ago, and fishing for fun these days, being 13 years on tour, there's always Charles over here working the board here. He's always got a camera in my face, and we're always trying to show, entertain, or educate the media crowd, the social media crowd, or whatever it is, always giving tips. So it may not sound like it. I try not to whine about it, but yes, it does become work at times. A lot of times, I try to shut the cameras off and just try to enjoy it for myself. That's why we're all here. That's why we all love the sport of bass fishing or the activity of bass fishing, because you're out there, you hear the birds chirping, you're seeing the wildlife, and you're just trying to tap into a beast, a thing, a living thing underneath the water, trying to trick him into biting a fake looking fish, a fake worm, a fake frog, or whatever it is. And that's the beauty of fishing, is convincing a 8, 9, 10 pound bass that's been around for 15 years into biting a fake lure. And I constantly have to remind myself of that. There's guys on tour that I fish that have been fishing for 20, 25 years. And just like with any relationship or whatever, you got to keep it fresh, right? Yes. And one of the ways I keep it fresh is by educating people like yourself or people on the internet, social media, whatever it is, on how I'm doing this. And that to me keeps it colorful, so it's not the same old song and dance day in and day out. Now, Josh is a guide out on O.H. Ivy or any of these other big bass lakes. Does it ever get monotonous for you?
I mean, then I got to just turn around and remind myself I was in the corporate world 4 years ago, and this is way better, right? It does get to be work, but it's more stressful. You know, if you came with me, I would be stressed out all day long because I would want you to catch a huge one, right? Yeah. Not because I want to catch one, but it's just a different type of stress, you know? Everyone has these expectations, and I just want to fulfill them. You know, there's nothing that makes me happier than seeing someone catch a 10-pound bass. So it's different. It's stressful. And his job is way more stressful than mine, you know, because, I mean, you're competing against 50 other dudes, 100 other guys, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm just competing with the fish.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, you know, the circuits we fish, they give us, 8 hours out of the day to go out and catch the 5 biggest fish you could possibly catch, put them in the live well, keep them alive, put them on a scale, and there's your, and then you place, and you're rewarded for whatever you catch. We release the fish live and unharmed, but I fish 4-day tournaments, and if you ever fish 2 days in a row, even if the weather conditions are the exact same, the fish don't always do what they did the day before. So it's a constant puzzle that you're trying to put together, and that's what keeps it fun. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro or a guide or whatever it is, the beauty of bass fishing is the fact that it's always unknown and you're trying to figure it out that day. So that always keeps it fresh. And that's the pure enjoyment of fishing. It's literally the unknown, and I'm going to try to figure out how to catch the biggest fish in the lake, and going through different lures, going through different colors. It really is a cool, fun game you can play with wildlife. You're trying to tap into, their natural instinct of just trying to survive, right? I mean, the rules of nature is don't be eating, and don't be eaten, and find a mate. So those 3 rules of nature, you're trying to tap into those while we're bass fishing. So we're really trying to tap into when you find something to eat. A bass is always trying to find something to eat to survive, and finding those little clues of which way the wind's blowing, or that watercolor's a little bit different. Let me change from a green pumpkin lure to a black and blue lure, and boom, there's a bite. So it's a constant puzzle, and it's a lot of fun. Once you catch that first fish, you catch a dozen fish, and you catch hundreds of fish. It really is a game, and it's a lot of fun to play each and every time you go out.
But this guy, so he fishes how many years? 13 on tour?
13 years on tour.
They don't just give him a free pass for next year. He has to actually do well, because if he doesn't do well, he doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
I just get to go fishing every day, So he's definitely in a different type of a situation, stress level. I don't know if I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, it can be stressful, but, hey, we're fishing, right? We're all fishing. We all love to do it, whether you're bank fishing, kayak fishing, or on a beautiful nitro boat. We can't take any of it for granted. And again, each and every day is different, and each and every day is a puzzle to figure out. And for me, I'm trying to figure it out better than 99 other guys who are trying to do the same thing. And for a guy like Josh, he's just trying to figure out the day and have a great time with his clients. So, and that's what, I encourage everyone to do is if you think about it like it's a puzzle, it's an outdoor puzzle, and you go through different lures and you recognize certain scenarios. And once it starts coming together that day, you get a couple bites. There's nothing more satisfying. Grab you a tackle bag. Carson, come on
Are you
down.
gonna swim bait?
Grab a bag and grab that, a towel, and one of those lures in that box
I was
right
gonna
there.
say you're gonna hose him.
What you got, Carson?
What would y'all's biggest boat safety tip be?
So Carson Cherry, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. He was involved in a boat wreck a couple weeks ago, a very, very bad one, where they were fishing a tournament and it was inclement weather, right? The visibility was down. It was raining like crazy. And we're so glad that you're sitting right there, Carson, because I saw the pictures. It was a boat collision. It was really bad. So
It was not their fault.
It was not your fault. You were doing your thing and a boat ran up on you guys and literally ran the boat over. This was just 2 weeks ago. And you look great, man. That's awesome. And the question is, what is your best safety tip for boating?
You gotta keep your head on a swivel, right? I'm already good at that because I'm paranoid. People are following me around, but you gotta pay attention to what other people are doing. It's no different than driving on the highway, right? I feel like I'm a great driver, but it's not me that I have to worry about. It's the people around you.
Yeah.
And boats, for instance, you don't even need a license. I don't think. You can just get in a boat and just go.
Yeah.
For the most part. So just pay attention to your surroundings. Your situation, it was raining, right? Didn't you have a hood on? You couldn't hear?
We were graphing. We had an umbrella on. We heard him coming. We watched him hit us.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's videos all online showing stuff just like that, and sometimes people just aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Luckily, I mean, seriously, that was a bad situation. If you guys saw the boat, you would be like, wow, someone...
Yeah.
If you would have been in the passenger seat, you would have been dead.
Yeah, you wouldn't be here right
But he
now.
was sitting in the middle for whatever reason.
My buddy was graphing, and I was in the middle holding the umbrella. So
Yeah.
It didn't get soaked.
So
Wow. And the boat, you guys were just out in the middle. You were sitting in the middle. Your partner was just kind of idling along, and a boat ran up behind you and literally
landed on top of it.
On top of you guys. And that's just crazy. One big safety tip I could give, and I do this all across the country, and I run that boat all around. When we're out there in our boats and you see a game warden or a sheriff's boat, and he comes up on you. I've been there a million times, so is he. He comes up on you with his lights flashing, and all of us think, man, why is this guy harassing me? Like, why is he coming up, and why is he doing a safety check? Okay, he's checking for life vest for every person in the boat. So if I've got 3 guys in my boat, I better have 3 life jackets in my boat. He's looking for a throw cushion. He's looking for a fire extinguisher. In some cases, some kind of noise-making device. And in some occasions, an oar or a paddle. And they do these things for a reason. We want everyone out there to be safe, obviously. But the number one thing is always have that life jacket handy. I've seen guys get ejected from boats at 30 miles an hour, but you would be surprised how much damage can be done if you're ejected from a boat at 30 miles an hour. So all those rules that they set in your boat, the Coast Guard has these rules. You must have a life jacket for everyone in your boat. You must have a throw cushion. They do that for a reason. They enforce those rules for a reason, those laws for a reason. And that's about as basic as you can get. But in your situation, when someone doesn't see you, make sure you have in those types of scenarios, make sure you have your running lights on, the green and red bow light and the stern light as well. Visibility is huge. Make sure your horn is always working. And man, that's just a tough deal when, it's just like riding a motorcycle. Over there, my buddy Brandon over there rides a motorcycle. I'm not worried one bit about his skill riding a motorcycle on the road. It's just the people around you. And not everyone is a responsible bike rider. Not everyone is a responsible boat driver. And you have to kind of prepare as much as you can for those types of people. Get yourself a rod.
I'm glad you survived.
Yes, sir. Who do we got over here? Mr. Cannon, how we doing?
What is the best time and places to fish a big glide bait?
Yeah. So the question is, what is the best time and place to throw a big glide bait? A big glide bait. A big glide bait is a lure like this here. This is a Bass Pro version here. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. When we're targeting 10 pounders, instead of throwing that small fluke or that small worm, I really, really like throwing a lure that big right there. And that just imitates either a crappie or a largemouth or a baby largemouth bass. But as far as time and place to throw a glide bait that big, again, on a good day, you're going to catch 3 to 4 fish on that thing right there. Wind blown points, once again, with inside of the dam. We're imitating larger than normal forage. We're imitating baby carp. We're imitating crappie that are in all these lakes. And there's one beautiful thing about bass fishing is, when you're worried, when you're thinking about like a color pattern for a big, larger than normal lure like this, there are always, whether there's shad in there, rainbow trout, crappie or not, there are always baby bass in the lake we're fishing, and big bass love smaller bass to eat. So I always like to recommend any type of lure this big, any type of white sides with yellow or green accents to it like this right there represents a baby bass. But time and place, again, going back to what Josh says, if you're looking for a huge fish on a glide bait, you have to fish where huge fish live. So OHIV, Lake Fork, Lake Eufaula, kind of. Arbuckle's a good one, not too far from here. And your old man tells me there's some big ones right up here. Big smallmouth love a lure that big right there. But time is real simple. Spring and fall when the fish are relating shallow. Again, target those flatter looking wind-blown points and cast that thing as far as you can across that point and just kind of, work it real slow out of there. And there's one really cool key when you're fishing a larger than normal lure like this is they don't see a lot of lures this big. Most guys are throwing crankbaits and spinner baits and worms, whereas this thing right here, not a lot of guys are throwing something this big. So I've always been the type of fisherman to throw and to do something different, looking for those bigger bites. And a glide bait is a really good way to do that. Again, you're trying to fool a 10-plus-year-old bass into biting a fake piece of plastic that happens to look like a fish. So you got to make sure it looks as natural as possible. Try to recognize, the depth that most of the bait fish are hanging out in, whether it's 4 to 6 feet using electronics or with your eyeballs, and just try to imitate that same depth, the same speed those bait fish are moving, and that's how you get really big bites on this. The other thing is when you get a bite on a glide bait like this, be prepared for it. Don't throw this on a spinning rod. Don't throw it on a 7-foot medium heavy. You want to throw this on like a 7.5 to 8 foot heavy action bait casting rod with minimum 20-pound test on something like this, because when you get that bite of a lifetime, you want to land that bite of a lifetime, and that means bigger tackle, bigger gear when you're throwing bigger lures.
So the best time to do it, in my opinion, is spring when they're on the nest. They get really aggressive, and you don't really have to fake them out as much as you do in other times of year. They see it and they just attack it. And another part of that, throwing that in the spring, they'll show themselves. A lot of times they'll follow that bait all the way to the boat.
Good point.
And if that happens a couple times, you called me 2 years ago. He had a big one following him twice, and I went over there looking for the bed, and I couldn't find it. They'll show themselves, and then okay, I need to dial in, figure out where that nest is,
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
The spring, March, April, May, that's pretty much the only time I throw that
And you could do the old bait and switch. If you start getting a lot of followers on that, and I'm talking big ones, 8, 9, and 10 pounders, do the old bait and switch. Have a little, I know your dad's got a lot of spinning rods with worms and little things handy. So just grab his rod with the little shaky head on it. When that big fish follows that big lure out like that, Dad, let me borrow that spinning rod. Throw your little shaky head or wacky rigged worm right in there afterwards. A lot of times you get that big fish to bite because she's looking to eat, right? Oh, that doesn't look, the wind's not blowing hard enough. I could see that there's hooks on there. I'm not going to bite that. But as she turns around to go back to where she was hiding, oh, there's a worm falling down. That's an easy meal. Let me just eat that right there. And then your dad's going to be taking a picture of it and sending it to me. So that's a good way to land those fish that follow this thing. Grab a rod. Dead center here, black shirt, green glasses. You. Yeah. Here you go, Cannon. Nice shirt, dude.
Thank you.
What's your name?
I'm Shane.
Shane.
Yeah, I'm tournament director for Lawton Fort Sill.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I just got a different kind of question for you guys.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Oklahoma lake and why?
Yeah. Josh.
All right, so trophy numbers, it kind of goes two ways. So my favorite Oklahoma lake for 8+ pounders is Dripping Springs.
Really? Oh, let me write this down because I've never even heard of that.
I've never heard
Dripping
that either.
Springs does not have a high population of bass. It's a lot like Arbuckle. Arbuckle has huge bass, but there's just not a whole lot of them. Dripping Springs is my number one. There's such a big number of big fish, right? But they're pretty educated because I've thrown at most of them. Okema Lake is probably the overall best lake in the state. Tons of numbers, 5 to 8 pound bass like crazy. They're super healthy. There's fish on bait right now as we're talking out in the middle of the channel. There's fish up shallow in the grass right now. So there's just a big number of fish in Okema. They've really taken care of that lake, unlike a lot of the other ones, as you probably know. Dripping Springs, Okema. Prague is good, but this time of year the grass starts growing and they're really kind of hard to catch this time of year. So,
Gotcha.
but there's a lot of good lakes around. You know, Arbuckle, you can catch a 10 pounder. Some of these Duncan lakes used to be good. I don't know if they're good anymore. Probably not.
Nah. Sometimes.
So the question is, what is your favorite Oklahoma lake and why? And Josh just named a couple of really nice ones. And I'm going to go ahead and say Lake Arbuckle for me. It reminds me a lot of how I grew up fishing back home in California. Deep, clear water, rocky. Again, there aren't a lot of fish in there, but there are some very, very big ones in there. And it's a great lake to go to, whether you're fishing from the bank or fishing out of a boat, a kayak, whatever it is, to work on things, to work on certain techniques like the glide bait, like finessing a drop shot or a wacky rigged worm or something like that. Arbuckle has a lot to offer as far as, rocky points and ledges, deep water, shallow water. You've got, the clear end along the dam. That's like my favorite spot on the dam of Lake Arbuckle. It is an awesome fishery. You catch big smallmouth. I was just there earlier this year in March, and I caught like a 5-pound smallmouth. Awesome. I've caught many 7, 8, 9-pound largemouth out of that place. But here locally, Justin took me out to Lettra Lake, and that place is cool. That place is very cool. I love the potential of catching a big one deep. That day we were catching about 25 feet of water, and I really like the idea of fishing grass lines. Again, grass provides oxygen, it provides cover and habitat for small fish, and when you have small fish, you have big fish chasing the small fish. So those grass lines and grass points and grass clumps are very good. So around here, I would say Lettra.
Pretty much anywhere they've stocked a Florida bass.
Right. Yeah.
And that's all online. I don't think they keep up with it much anymore, but any of the Florida bass lakes, especially the small city lakes,
Right.
you can have some fun. Wetumpka, Walika, all the little bitty 300-acre ones or less.
Grab you a Toyota bag, a towel, and any of the lures there. Let's go in the back, blue shirt, female there. What's your name?
Katie.
Katie, what you got?
How long should you stay in one spot without catching anything before moving to the next when you're bank fishing?
That's a great question. When you are bank fishing, how long should you stay in one spot before moving on to the next spot or before walking to the other side of the pond, bank fishing, or the lake?
Yeah, so got to remember what I used to do. I used to take my time pretty much.
Yep.
Cover every little spot.
Every angle.
Every twig.
Yep.
Every little piece of shade. My grandma, believe it or not, was the world's best. She would sit there and throw in one single spot like 10 times. It would drive me crazy. But I'm telling you, my grandma used to outfish me constantly. So I'm not the most patient guy in the world, but you're going to want to hit every spot. Like he said, those fish are going to be up shallow. If you move too fast, you're going to start scaring them off the shore because they can see you.
Yeah.
Especially in ponds and lakes.
They're going to think you're a bird or a coyote or a raccoon.
So take your time, cover all the spots before you move down 10 or 15 feet, 20 feet.
Yeah, my advice, I deal with this question. I ask myself all the time, okay, there's no fish here. I need to move. Just look for sun. This is the other cool thing about fishing from the bank, right? You're out there in nature. You're not at the mall. You're not at the Chick-fil-A where there's people everywhere and there's a lot going on. Just really slow down, take it all in, enjoy the birds, all the wildlife. And with the wildlife, always look for signs of life. When we're bass fishing, bass follow life, okay? And life could be a tree, a living tree. It could be a living piece of aquatic vegetation. And life, any type of living thing attracts other living things. So if you happen to walk up on a spot and it's just plain sand, you don't see frogs, you don't see tadpoles, you don't see the little minnows in the ponds, there's no life there. Maybe make a few casts just to find out and check. But if there's no life there, chances are there's no bass there. So walk around, maybe go to the corner where there's a little more habitat, whether it's just a little deeper spot, whether it's algae, something that attracts those frogs and those little minnows, birds, ducks. I've seen, bass actually eat birds or eat baby ducks. So any type of life attracts these big, aggressive, largemouth bass. So always look for some type of life. And hey, if there's life all over the lake and all over the pond, chances are there's bass all over that pond. It's healthy. It just shows it's very healthy. Now, when we go to a pond on a drought year that's super low, you look at the banks and all the grass and living things are up on the bank. That's when you want to go cast to the middle of the pond. You're casting out into the unknown. Maybe there's some life out there. Maybe there's some grass. Maybe that's where the fish are. But always just look for some type of living thing. It could be a plant. It could be the frog. It could be bait fish jumping on the surface. The bass won't be far behind from any type of life. Grab a rod. Over here on the left, another female. Let's keep that rolling. And I'll get you, sir, right after the orange shirt.
Front row up here has been asking you.
Oh, I haven't
making
seen
eye contact.
Right here? Oh, yeah.
And you've been ignoring her.
Yeah, sorry. I'll let you pick next time. Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
Riley.
Riley? Very cool.
So my question is, what's the best water to fish in? Like, what's your favorite, muddy or clear?
Yeah, the question is, what's your favorite water to fish in, either muddy or clear? Josh?
Got to be muddy.
Yeah.
You can fake them out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, so I'm staring at them on a screen, right? But even old school, it's still got to be muddy.
Dang, you pointed at me and said old school, bro.
What? so the muddy water, you can just fake them out a lot easier. They're not as smart, right? Because they can't see as well. But definitely in the muddier water, you're going to want, if you're not on a boat, right, with electronics, something that makes noise, something that's really bright, bright crankbaits, top waters, stuff like that. Muddy water for sure.
I'm gonna go opposite. I like the clear water. I like the Letras. I like Arbuckles. To me, it's more of a challenge to fool a bass into putting its lips and its mouth around a fake lure. So I like the challenge. I like picking up on the wind-blown sides, again, identifying life. Day in and day out, yes, your muddy, more stained water are going to keep the fish typically shallower and typically more aggressive. But I like the challenge of fishing the clear water lakes. A lot of times I'm downsizing my line. Instead of 15-pound tests, a lot of times I'll go to 10-pound, 12-pound test. But I like the challenge of fishing clear water. Don't be intimidated by really, really, really dirty water. I've watched this man catch 10-pounders, 11-pounders in water that if you were to put your hand in the water, you can't see past you can't see your fingertips if you have your hand down to your wrist right here. So bass don't just use their eyes to feed. They have what's called a lateral line. They pick up every little vibration and movement underneath the water surface. And just because it's really, really muddy and dirty doesn't mean you can't catch a fish out of it. So yes, I prefer the clear water. That's kind of how I grew up fishing. But, if I were to choose, let's say the north end of a lake is really, really muddy and stained and the south end is clear, I'll fish both, but I'll generally go to the clear water side. I know I could catch a lot of numbers in the dirtier water. There's fish are going to be more aggressive. But I like fishing on the south end where it's kind of a little bit clearer and deeper. I just like the challenge. Good question, Riley. Grab a rod. Orange shirt over here, and I'll move my way over it.
You're going to get front row, right?
Yep.
All right. What's up?
My name's Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
So I'm seeing a lot of fish up shallow during tournaments.
Yep.
What's your go-to bait to get those fish to bite? Because I'm throwing everything in the kitchen sink. So
Yeah.
Can you give me some pointers?
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, Brandon fishes tournaments. He's seeing a lot of fish up shallow, but they just don't want to bite. That's when I turn to the extreme end of the spectrum on one side and also the other. So this extreme over here is large baits and fast and loud, and you're just trying to get them to react to something. Again, we want wind and a little bit of choppiness so you could fool them a little better. But, instead of that medium retrieve chatterbait or medium retrieve spinnerbait or a jerkbait or a crankbait medium retrieve, let's speed it up. Let's get them a little more erratic with a jerkbait with a big top water. Something really obnoxious just to try to trigger those fish into biting. It really taps into their natural instinct and curiosity, and they're going to put their lips on it. And the other side of the spectrum is something very, very slow and very, very small. The last tournament I fished, I had a top 20 or so out there in South Carolina, and I fished what's called a Neko rigged worm. So it's a soft plastic worm on 8-pound test line. It's rigged wacky style with a little nail weight in the head, and it falls straight down. And as it hits the bottom, I just shake it a little bit. And I believe that, when you cast it to an area where there's fish around, they'll see it coming down. It's falling naturally, and they'll kind of go over there and investigate. And once I start shaking that rod tip and putting a little bit of action on that soft plastic lure, it shakes on the bottom. It kind of looks like it's just digging into the mud or into the bottom, and the fish just really have no choice. It taps into their curiosity, and they don't have arms to look at it, feel it, and smell it. The only way they could kind of satisfy that curiosity is by putting their mouth on it and tasting it. So very, very fast and erratic, or super, super slow and finessey, and you'll get those fish that you're seeing to bite one way or the other.
Okay.
So as far as the big fish go, I can kind of speak on that. This time of year especially, for every 50 I see on the screen, I catch one on average, right? So if you see them, don't spend a whole lot of time on them, because, are you seeing a lot of them?
I'm seeing bigger ones.
Yeah.
I'll get maybe 1 out of 15 I'll get a big bite. I'll get a 4-pounder, be like, all right, I'm doing something right. And then the next 3 or 4 I see up shallow, I'm using the same type of bait, or I'm throwing everything and I'm not getting a single bite. And I would spend maybe 15 to 20 minutes on that fish.
Yeah, I don't spend one cast, that's it.
Okay.
That fish sees my bait and doesn't eat, I'm on to the next one. Cover water. Don't spend a whole lot of time on one single fish, for sure.
That's awesome.
I compare it to hunting quail. The faster you walk, the more coveys you're going to spook up, and the more opportunities you're going to get. Same with bass. The more water you cover, the more opportunities you're going to get to actually get a big fish to eat, because they're not all going to eat, right? There's some days where you might catch 5 out of 50. Some days you might catch 15 out of 50, but most days, especially this time of year, it's one big bite a day, right?
Yeah.
So just stay moving.
Stay persistent.
Yeah. As far as baits, black buzzbait. I caught my first 8-pounder this time of year, early June, on a black buzzbait.
Yeah.
So up shallow.
That's a good one.
No electronics.
And that's that extreme side, right? Real loud, clacky, top water makes them commit.
And it was an explosion. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Grab yourself,
Appreciate
grab a
it, guys.
Toyota bag,
Stay
and a
moving.
towel and a lure. Yes, sir, Brandon. Where's front row over here? Yeah.
Yes. He's got a shoulder workout waiting on you.
All right, so my questions are going to be, what's the best color, season-wise?
Yeah.
How do they hit, from y'all's experience, what's the best color to use?
Yeah.
It's warmer or colder?
Yeah, so the question is, what's the best color of lure to use seasonally? And really, from January to December, my colors never change, really. It's either going to be white, some sort of hue of white or pearl. When we're talking about moving baits like spinner baits, crankbaits, jerk baits, and glide baits, swim baits. So some type of pearly white. And And, that's with our hard baits and fast moving stuff. Can't go wrong with white, maybe a little bit of chartreuse. Now, soft plastics, we're talking jigs, we're talking drop shots, Texas rigs, any soft plastic lures. There are really only 2 colors that I use across the country, all over the board. In your stained water, let's call it 3 feet of visibility or less, it's going to be black and blue. So black with blue flake, phenomenal color. Maybe June bug in there as well, but black and blue. Anything 3 foot of visibility or greater is going to be some variation of green pumpkin. And green pumpkin essentially is just a brown natural color. It looks like a crawfish. It could imitate a earthworm. It could imitate any type of bluegill. But literally black and blue in dirty water, or some variation of green pumpkin or watermelon with the soft plastics in that clear water.
So I like to use something that's white or translucent, something that looks like a bait fish. I'm also looking at the screen too, right? So I'm presenting the bait very close to these fish. If I wasn't staring at a screen, dirty water, they're going to be able to see something like fire tiger, chartreuse, red, orange, whatever. They're going to be able to see that bait a lot farther than they would a translucent colored bait, right? So it varies on the clarity of the water, basically. Especially if you don't have the electronics. That's when it really is important.
Yeah.
What color you're using, right? Yeah. So yeah, dirty water, fire tiger, crankbaits, baits that make noise.
Fire tiger is such an Oklahoma color. Like I haven't heard fire tigers in a long time.
And unfortunately, I haven't used those colors in so long because I'm too focused in on the other stuff. But yeah,
I think more importantly than color, a lot of times is just the action that you give that lure. So, why does a crankbait work so well? Because of the action. It looks just like a bait fish swimming through the water, and it hits. What I mean by hit is it vibrates in the water, and it's very attractive to those fish. Now, whether it's white, whether it's chartreuse, whether it's a brown crankbait, I think they're more tuned into what the action is doing. I mean, because we've all fished at night. Some of us have been around for a while. We've fished at night. Color doesn't matter at night. It's more of the action and the vibration it gives off in the water. So my advice to you is to keep it super simple with colors, black and blue, green pumpkin, or any variation of white when we're imitating the bait fish type lures. And just more think about the action and what it's doing in the water. Make sure it's as natural as possible, and that it vibrates and gives off a nice natural wiggle to it. There's plenty of lures in here that look just like that.
If you're fishing at night, black.
All right.
Yeah.
Kind of completely
more
opposite.
of a silhouette. It gives more of a silhouette, something to hone in on.
All right.
So grab a bag, a towel, and a bait there. Oh, right over here. I love softball.
What tips do you have to make my dad a better fisherman?
All right. For those of you who don't know, this is the GM's daughter here, and she just asked, what tips do you have to make my dad a better fisherman?
It was Mike's idea.
I mean, can you pull some strings and get him more time off from work? That's so awesome. That's a great question. Can you buy him a guided trip with Josh Jones? That's what, maybe talk your mom into buying a guide trip. No, I talk with your dad a lot, and he does very well. He just won a tournament out here 2 weeks ago. My advice to someone that's kind of seasoned, like Justin Rogers, and that's his boat over there. If you look at his boat in the corner over there, it's rigged out with the latest electronics, which is his deal. So here, I was gonna, if you've been fishing for a while, there's a couple people who have been fishing for a while out here. I would say, 3 years or better. Really the next step, the hottest thing right now is using forward-facing sonar and electronics. And my good buddy Josh Jones here, I'm proud to say he got on that faster than anyone I know, and he's been catching a lot of fish on forward-facing sonar and electronics. And he did it way faster than pretty much everyone I know. So getting good with your electronics, just that sonar that is shooting out in front of the boat literally paints a picture of what type. I've been talking about all the life and looking for signs of life. there's no better tool than live imaging sonar shooting 100 feet out in front of the boat. And he's able to control it with his trolling motor, and it just gives a nice solid image of what is going on underneath the water. So when Josh talks about, I'm throwing at every fish, and they may follow it down, but I'm going to move on to the next one. Josh is literally seeing with his electronics on that screen exactly what is down there. And for you crappie fishermen out there, Josh actually started crappie fishing before he did the bass thing. And that's even more fun because you see these school of crappie swimming around and you're able to present your lure, your crappie jig, that minnow right in that school of crappie. And so, yeah, my advice is to encourage them to keep using that forward facing sonar.
But you're not going to get better if you don't go. Yeah. So you got
to go. He's too busy organizing things like this.
Yeah.
Great question.
Time on the water is the most important thing.
Grab you a rod. Let's go to the back here, right down the center. You've been raising your hand quite a bit. Yes, sir. You. Firefighter? Yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, she got $20 for it. Did she? Hey, it wasn't me.
There we go.
Hello.
I'm going to change the subject. Y'all been talking about largemouth.
Yeah.
I grew up in Dallas, and I don't know if y'all know Grapevine Lake.
Grapevine?
Grapevine. I got hooked on smallmouth there.
Very cool.
You're going to Lake Latonka tomorrow?
Yeah.
You're not going to find the grass like Letra.
Yep.
What are you going to, if you go for smallmouth, what are you looking for? What are you looking for, and what are you using?
Ooh. So what I'm looking for right now, if I went to Latonka, the smallmouth are probably spawning right now. They probably started a month ago, but they typically spawn out deeper as well. How clear is it right now?
Clear. It's clear. I haven't been in a couple of weeks. I've been in EMT class.
Oh yeah, I got my EMT license too. By the way,
really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Honestly though, for spawning smallmouth, the flogger. Do you use a flogger?
Yeah, it works good.
Yeah, but they don't really have that around here. The smallmouth that I usually fish for live deeper, right? On OH Ivy, there used to be a good population of them, but they were all like 40 foot deep. That's where the majority of your smallmouth are going to be. Offshore, deeper. Right now, they're going to be spawning a lot of them, but there's always a population year round with smallmouth out deep. So yeah, do you have forward facing sonar?
Negative.
So it'd be tough.
I'm a weekend warrior.
Yeah.
So the question is targeting smallmouth on Latonka this time of year. I'll make it real simple for you. So instead of those really obvious points I'm talking about, and Latonka's got those big boulders, right? What you want to do is look for the pea gravel or just gravel flats. So you're going down in your boat and you see the big boulders. Yeah, those look fun and cool. And yes, there could be fish on there. But the majority of the smallmouth in this region of the country like that real small gravel this time of year. Again, they'll be in and around the spawn, so they like to build nests and spawn around that stuff. So look at that bank that's kind of flatter, less points, more flats, and smaller rocks, just the small gravelly type of rocks. As far as lures go, I think the hottest thing for smallmouth right now, hands down, is probably a Ned rig. Essentially, that is a small jig head, and it's just a very small 2.5 to 3 inch straight worm, and you just kind of fish it slow on the bottom. It imitates a crawfish that smallmouth absolutely love to eat. So
is that the one with the nail weight?
No, a Ned rig. You know what a Ned rig is?
So I don't know.
It's like a flattened out shaky head, small hook, finesse presentation on a spinning rod. But a Ned rig catches more smallmouth from California all the way up to New York than any lure out there. Period.
Right.
And it just stands up, and the smallmouth absolutely demolish it. It's a finesse presentation.
And you got a Ned rig.
Yeah.
So you use it on the bottom.
Yep. Yeah. So without without forward-facing sonar, feel your way across the bottom. If you start to feel huge rocks, kind of stay away from that. You want to feel the little pebbles, that are just moving across. They'll be more, relating to those small gravelly spots, opposed to the wintertime rocks, the summertime rocks, and stuff like that. So look for flats of pea gravel.
So I do know at Texoma this time of year through the summer, they get in the cracks of those big, huge boulders.
in the shade.
In the
right.
shade. The
Yep.
smallmouth get way up in there.
Yeah, that's good stuff too.
I've caught them crankbaits in Texoma this time of the year, but
yeah,
not much here.
I don't think there's as many as there used to be here either.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know the state record was caught here at Latonka years ago, but the fishing game that come out and shock the lake said that they're still there, but you don't catch them as often.
Cool. Well, good luck in your tournament.
Yeah.
Grab a Toyota bag there and grab one of those lures. Let's go ahead, blue shirt, front row.
Justin, kayak fisherman from
Hey,
Texas.
Justin, how you doing?
So you got me into glide bait.
Yeah.
Like, hands down.
Cool.
Where do you make the change from glide to a soft body this time of year?
Yeah. So the glide bait works very, very well in March and then now. So now the gizzard shad are really active up shallow, and essentially, they imitate trout. Yes, they imitate crappie, but essentially these southern lakes, these Texas, Oklahoma lakes, big bass in the post-spawn, which we're at right now, as the water temperatures start to rise, they start moving faster, the metabolism's rising. They're after big gizzard shad right now. So I like throwing big gizzard glides, 7, 8-inch glide baits, but I work it real fast. Again, what I want you to do is look for kind of flatter, nothing points. A lot of times clay points are awesome this time of year with the glide bait. And I'm talking 3 to 4 feet of water. So if you find a little bit of wind and a flat, nothing looking point, that's what gizzard shad love to spawn on. Clay points, gravel points, not that point, this point right here. Cast up on it, cast across it. And the retrieve this time of year, opposed to March. March is a real slow.
So you're going with the chop this time of year?
I go with the chop. Go with the chop. Pop, 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 chop, chop, chop. Pause, chop, chop, pause. Bam, that's when they get it. So wind blown, shallow, nothing looking points. We're imitating gizzard shad, and fish really, really love eating gizzard shad in May and June.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for y'all coming down.
Grab a bag and grab one of those glides if there's any left. Yeah, we'll try to run through these. Camo shirt in the middle right there. Mustache. Beautiful mustache. Wish my mustache looked like that. Where'd your mustache go?
I'm getting gray.
You trying to hide it?
I just shaved. It was so gray, all of it.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for coming. It's been real enjoyable. We've talked about depth, water clarity.
Yep.
Colors of lures.
Yep.
You haven't talked anything about scent.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm about scent.
Yeah, the question is scent. So there's these there are companies that are making a scent for bass. So we talked about, looking for life. We talked about sight feeding, fish feed off of sight, vibration. What about the sense of smell, and scent? There's various scent manufacturers out there. Does scents really work?
I don't want to throw them all under the bus, but from my crappie experience onto the bass, I've never actually proven it to work. And I've tried and tried and tried. And all I've done is make a mess either in my tackle box or on my boat with these scents. From
Block bags work.
Yeah, from crappie nibbles to now they might have worked. Well, they probably never worked, actually. I don't think they work, personally.
Yeah, I think it's a mental thing that the fisherman, either has or doesn't have. I will say this: the stuff I've been using is called bait fuel. You can't smell it to your, it's kind of a gel. It doesn't make a mess. But I've seen occasions where I'm bed fishing, visually looking at a bass on a bed. I make a couple flips with a tube or a creature bait, and nothing. I get her fired up, yes. Then I put some scent on, throw it in there, and she bites the first time. Now, is it because I got her fired up and gave it a rest and then threw it in there and then she bit, or does the scent really work? Until the bass starts speaking English and telling us, yes, I bit because of that, we won't ever know. But I will tell you that when I have my dogs in the boat, there's something about that scent that the dogs love. I mean, they're literally trying to eat this scent, and I can't smell it with my human nose. There's something there. I've heard stories of raccoons getting in boats and trying to eat this scent. So there's definitely something there, but I think more so, again, we talked about the action and vibration of lures. I think that's paramount into getting bites. I think scent is just the cherry on top, and it's all personal preference, honestly.
So ask another one.
Yeah, going back to the scent deal, I was on some fish a couple years ago, and I went out and bought 2 or 3 different types of scent. This was actually at Lake Fork, and I found all these fish. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go get some scent, see if this changes anything. I caught 0 with the scent. I caught 0 without it, or 0 with it. So it didn't help trigger bites that day. The scent didn't.
One more, fire away.
You got me sideways here.
Sorry.
I lost it.
That's all right. Grab a tackle bag.
I interrupted.
Thanks,
right
guys.
down here, Under Armour shirt. We'll start blazing through these guys. We want to get everyone here. Grab a bag, Toyota bag.
I'm Chris, and I got a similar question. I guess you're talking about just the different things that you might tempt a fish with, and one is the hydro wave. I mean, you don't hear a lot of talk about that, but I got one. I got it on my kayak. I can't figure out whether or not it works or not, and I don't really know if there maybe is situational. Depending on what type of fishing you're doing. If you're doing slow presentation or if you're cranking baits, past them and stuff. I just don't know, what your opinion might be on that.
So the question is regarding the use of an underwater speaker that imitates the sound of bass eating forage like bait fish, shad, and things like that. It's literally a speaker that's hooked up to your trolling motor, and it sounds like fish eating underwater. Not a believer. I've had it on my boats over the years, and I really cannot tell a difference. I really cannot. Again, I think with the scent thing, that's a good little piggyback question on the scent thing. I think it's personal preference. I think it instills confidence in the angler. So if it works for you, it works for Kevin Van Dam or whoever is promoting it. So look closely there, on who's promoting it. It's more of a mental thing. So if you think it helps you, roll with it. If not, do without.
I'm taking it off, but I was just curious, because maybe it's a situational thing that I haven't figured out.
More times than not.
I've never used it, but I will tell you for fact, when I used to catfish down on the Arkansas River below the Low Water Dam in downtown Tulsa, the key was to get hung up. We had a shad head, right, on a split shot, and we were throwing it directly out from where we were standing and hoping it got hung up in the current. Because once it got hung up, you would pop that line as fast as you could, and that line popping on that water would attract the fish. 100%. And every time you got hung up, you would be shaking it. A catfish would come, see that shad head, and eat.
Wow.
Almost immediately, within a minute. And that's actually happened to me one time with a deep diving crankbait on Dripping Springs Lake. Maybe the biggest fish I've ever even hooked out there. I got it hung up, about 4 feet of water. I don't know why I was throwing a deep diver in that shallow water. I was popping the line, and that bass came and got me unhung, and I ended up losing it. And that actually happened on video with Jimmy Houston. I got an A-rig hung up. I was popping the line, and an 8-pounder came and got me unhung.
Insane.
So there's something to
the
sound, but I'm not sure that necessarily mimics the same sound that I'm talking about. I haven't heard anyone say, "Oh, this thing is amazing,"
Yeah, and they have all these different, if you get like the KVD edition of it, there's probably
different
20 some different sound patterns that you can play on there. And it's like, and they have names for it. So you can kind of like tie it. If I'm fishing around docks, there's one for docks and stuff.
Yeah, I'll just tell you. Yeah, I love Kevin. He's a good dude, Kevin Van Dam, and he'll catch just as many fish without it as he does with it on. So
yeah, I was just wondering.
Grab your bag
We
and a
don't
lure.
talk about that very
Yes, sir, Chris. Thank
Put
you.
it on eBay.
Let's go with the pink shirt back there. I'll give some of these rods away. You guys, we'll go to 7:45, so it's 7:27. We'll go to 7:45 if we don't get to all the questions. Hopefully we get to all, but if not, I want to have the 17-year-olds and less line up, and then the women line up, and we'll give away the remaining rods and tackle to all the men. Go ahead. Say that one more time.
What got y'all into fishing?
Yeah, the question is what got y'all into fishing? And like those pond questions we had earlier, I was so curious. This little creek and pond we had about a half mile from our house. I used to go down there and walk down there all the time. I saw the ducks, the frogs, but I got sick of catching the frogs. I wanted to catch the fish that were in this pond. And essentially, it was my curiosity that was intriguing when I thought about, how do I get these fish to bite? Again, it's like a puzzle. It's like an outdoor game. So when you start going through different lures and different presentations, it starts to click and you start to get more and more intrigued by what's going on underneath the water. I remember the very first bass I caught was on a plastic worm I was talking about up here. I remember making a cast into this pond, and it was a bad cast. It landed on a little twig that was on the surface, and I cast it right onto that twig. I'm like, man, that's a bad cast. And I was trying to get this worm off of this twig on the surface, and a bass came up and ate it like it was a dragonfly off of that twig, and I was hooked ever since. So that's what hooked me.
Yeah. My dad and my grandma mainly loved fishing. We lived by a pond, and we'd walk across to the pond every evening. And Southern Arkansas, we had to battle fire ants and snakes and everything else. Cows. Those mama cows are mean. So that was part of the, I was this tall, terrified of cows. I still kind of don't like them. But my grandma pretty much got me into fishing. As crazy as that is.
That's awesome. Go ahead and grab your rod. Oh, let's go. Let's go with another young angler over here. Hello.
Hi.
What you got? Why is it so much fun to fish?
I ask myself that a lot. Just about every day. I don't know. It's the opportunity to catch a bigger one the next cast. You never know what you're going to catch. It could be a catfish, a bass, a bluegill, and they taste pretty good too. So it's nice to keep them every once in a while.
You'll understand this in a few years, but I catch big fish for the gram. I like taking that selfie of the big fish and showing everyone that we're catching fish out here. But yeah, fishing is fun. And again, it's just like a little puzzle, game. It's the same thing out there on the water. Again, you catch a fish on one lure one day, the very next day, they might want another lure. So it's a fun little game to play in the outdoors. Go grab you a rod. What else we got? In the back right there, another female. Let's keep that ball rolling.
What age did you know that you wanted to pursue fishing professionally?
Yeah. So what age did I know I wanted to pursue bass fishing professionally? It was a little different when I started. I'm in my late 30s now. When I started, I was watching it on TV, and I started seeing these guys in these jerseys and awesome boats and making a living. They'd show like the earnings and stuff on there. I'm like, hey, I can make a living out of this. Let's just see how good I am compared to the local crowd. There's a lot of different various tournaments around here. But more importantly, right now, high school fishing and college fishing is as hot as it's ever been, and it continues to grow. So back then when I started, I didn't have those avenues. I had to go out there, learn myself, and compare myself to the guys who have been doing it for years and years and years. Nowadays, I highly encourage, someone of your age to get into high school programs, local club tournaments, and then into college fishing programs that'll help you take it one step at a time. That's the biggest thing in pro fishing or even guiding is to take it one step at a time, and you will know. And this is the beautiful thing about bass fishing is bass don't care whether a female or a male or a teenage girl or an older gentleman is fishing for that fish. They don't care. They just want to, eat something and get hooked, and now more than ever, there are more opportunities for someone your age to take it one step at a time. Don't ever take it 2 or 3 steps at a time. You'll know when you're ready when you start to compete and hang with the big boys. And right now there's more opportunity than ever.
I mean, I knew when I was a little child, the opportunity didn't come until I was 32.
Yeah.
So there was 25 years of me knowing what I wanted to do, but I just didn't make it happen. So, I mean, a lot of luck involved, but I knew I wanted to fish full time my whole entire life. But I had so many people telling me I couldn't do it, right? No, it's too expensive. It's too many levels. I remember them telling me that.
Yeah.
There's too many levels to go through.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like that with anything in life, right? If you want to work hard at something, hey, set goals and crush each and every goal along the way. All of a sudden, you'll be here with, the biggest names in the sport, just like that. But one step at a time.
Thank you.
Yep. Grab yourself a rod. Let's go with this serviceman over here. How you doing, sir? Hey, by the way, Fort Sill is just right here. We've got Marines here. We've got Army men here. Can we get a round of applause for all the servicemen and women? Put it on the line.
I'm about to buy a boat. What's the most important thing to decide before you actually purchase that boat?
Yeah. So, this gentleman's about to buy a boat. What's the most important factor to consider while you're buying a boat? There are many, like resale value. They say, the two happiest days of owning a boat is the day you buy it and the day you sell it. So think about resale. Think about the means and the type of fishing you're doing. I'll tell you this, if you have a wife or a girlfriend, and she's urging you to go with that fishing ski, I can't tell you a single person that's satisfied with a fishing ski. Either get a bass boat or a pleasure boat. Don't get the middle because go with the bass boat. Comfortability, that comfort level as far as the width of the bass boat. I highly encourage you, Bass Pro Shops, Aquamarine, they've got their boats set up here. Go for a test ride. Really, I mean, these companies and these dealers are happy to take you on a test ride. That way you know exactly what you're getting into. There's no surprises. And, always go with the biggest boat you can afford. I know a lot of guys who have bought 17 and 18-foot boats, and they always say, man, I wish I would have gone with the 2-year-old boat that's a 21-footer instead of that brand new 17 or 18-footer. So, stay in that 20 to 21-foot range. And then also sacrifice the bells and whistles for a good electronic setup, because that helps you catch more fish than the awesome air ride seats or the steering or whatever, the little blinker trim or whatever it is. Prioritize the comfort, the resale, and electronic setup.
Yeah. The most important thing is the electronics. That's in my opinion, but sacrifice speed. When you get a lot of speed, you get danger, really. I sound like an old man up here, but the faster boats are really dangerous.
They're light. They're squirrely.
The front ends are light. The backs are heavy. They don't fish very well. I'm about comfort. Nitros have huge fishing decks.
Yep.
Icons have huge fishing decks.
All three of these boats here, my Nitro,
Rangers.
his Ranger, and then his boat out front there.
The fishability is the most important.
And help yourself. Go ahead and hop in each and every one of them and really feel it. That way you know exactly what you're getting into.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank
But
you.
definitely,
Thank you.
don't slack on the electronics.
Yes.
Grab you some tackle there. A bag, a towel, and a lure here. Red shirt over here. Yeah, go ahead. And grab tackle as well.
What is the best soft plastic or lure to use in grassy waters?
Yes. What is the best soft plastic lure to use in grassy waters? We're talking Letra. We're talking Lake Gunnersville, Florida. I'm going to go ahead and say a soft plastic fluke style bait, which just looks just like a bait fish, rigged Texas style. It's weedless. You're able to kill it on those points I was talking about. You're able to kill it and dead stick it and really let it fall in those holes and voids of the grass. Again, stay away from those long stretches, points, voids, little half moon shapes. Throw the fluke out there, jerk, 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 let it fall. And it looks like a dying bait fish. And when a fish notices it, he feels it, he sees it, sometimes he smells it, he can't resist. He's got to come over and eat it.
Yep. Any kind of a fluke, 6 cents flush. You can rig it Texas rig. You can rig it weedless. You can't go wrong with that. It doesn't get hung up in the grass a lot of times. So I second that.
Yep. Grab a rod. Over here, blue shirt. We'll go rapid fire here in these last 5 minutes, and we'll give the rest of the stuff away.
What do you think I should do when I'm fishing in a new spot?
Yeah. Question is, when you move to a new spot, what should you do? Do the same thing you're doing in that other spot. A lot of times, if you have confidence in that presentation or that lure a lot of times that spot movement, that spot change is enough to get that bite. But my advice is when you're testing these different spots from the bank or on a boat or whatever it is, just find yourself 2 to 3 confidence lures. Go watch YouTube videos on what really works, what doesn't, the colors and all that. But a fluke, a creature bait, and this time of year, some type of topwater. Always have those kind of handy. And as you move from spot to spot, try those 3 different confidence lures. And when you're pond fishing, just one lure, like a fluke or a worm. Spinner bait works really, really well. But try to find 2 or 3 different confidence lures. Stick with those, and then just keep on rotating through your spots. It'll pay off, I promise.
I second that.
Are you 17?
No.
Grab a rod. Grab a rod. Very cool. Point. Yep. Back in the back there. Hand up.
So when looking to get a new rod, like how do you know what action or length you need to get?
Yeah. So when you're looking to get a new rod, what action and length? Bass fishing is at the sweet spot's 7 feet. 7 feet. So 7'2", sometimes a 6'10". Think about it this way: the more hooks on that lure, we're talking crankbaits, topwaters, treble hooks, the softer you want that rod. And essentially, the softer that rod with those treble hooks, when a fish bites that lure, that softer rod absorbs the shock and it keeps those hooks pegged. When you start getting into some of these big swim baits and jigs and Texas rigs, you want a stiffer rod, like a medium heavy or a heavy, and you could up your length as well to 7.5 foot. But day in and day out, your utility rod, a 7 foot medium heavy, does most bass fishing technique, covers most bass fishing techniques, period.
7 to 7.5.
7 to 7.5.
7.5.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And again, the more hooks, the treble hooks, softer, and the more single hooks, the thicker the hooks, go with the heavy.
And those rods are nice because you can throw 25 different lures on them, right?
Yeah.
There's certain rods that are made for one bait.
Oh, okay.
So the 7.4, 7.5 medium heavy rods, spinner baits, Texas rigs, top waters, you can throw all kinds of stuff on them.
Grab you a Toyota bag and a lure there.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's go with the guy in the back, and we'll do one more after that.
What's your target points and stuff for windy days?
Yeah.
Target lures.
What's your target lures and locations for windy days? Hey, we're in the middle of Oklahoma, the plains here, and we get a lot of wind around here. Something moving. When there's wind, it breaks up the light penetration. Oftentimes, it triggers fish into biting, gives them more confidence to chase down a lure and eat it. So something fast and moving. A spinnerbait is so awesome in Oklahoma, in the state of Oklahoma. Clear water, dirty water, doesn't matter. If you have wind blowing on a point or some type of structure like a dock or a grass patch or point, a spinnerbait is awesome in Oklahoma.
Depends how hard the wind's blowing. Top waters are awesome when the wind's blowing.
Yeah, a little bit of chop to it.
But if it's 1 or 2 foot waves, obviously not. Spinnerbait, square bills, stuff like that. You cannot go wrong with the spinnerbait. Pretty much year round, anywhere in Oklahoma.
It's weedless. You can fish on laydowns, in the rocks, in the grass. It
Run
works
it about
really well.
this far under the surface, to where a lot of times where you can just barely see it.
Just out of sight.
So
grab yourself a rod. We'll do one more question. We'll do raffle, and then we'll give these rods away. In the back there, hand up. There you go. Yep. Guggen hat.
You got that hat?
I do. Actually, I gave one away that looked just like that. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for coming. What you got for us?
How much do you spend on the water a year?
Yeah, question is, how much time do I spend on the water of the year? Half of what he does. I go out there because my tournaments are 7 days long, 4 days of competition, 3 days of practice. So 365 days a year. I'll probably spend 150 days on the water.
About 300.
Dude.
The last year was a slow year. I think I fished 160, but about 300. 1 year I fished, I guess, 320. I put 640 hours on my boat.
That's amazing. And that just, as we wrap up here, that just goes to show, whether you decide to be a professional bass fisherman like myself, traveling the country, entering tournaments, there's, again, going back to different organizations and tournaments. There are more opportunities than ever right now today, and it's growing to actually make a living bass fishing. The hardest part is convincing your parents and grandparents that, hey, I want to do this for a living. But if you work hard at it, just like anything else, you will be there. I mean, you think, 300 days on the water, and he's getting paid every single day, guiding, working his butt off to put people on 10-pound plus fish. He's making an awesome living. I'm making a comfortable living myself. It just hard work pays off, whether you want to bowl for a living, play ping pong for a living, sell cars for a living, or be a professional fisherman or a guide. Hard work pays off each and every time.
You just got to outwork the competition.
Yeah. Grab yourself a rod. And what we want to do now, guys, for one, thank you all for being here. But you guys all signed a raffle ticket there. We're doing a big giveaway. What is it? Yeti cooler, big old prize pack. And this little baby right here, do you think she'll be able to grab one of those tickets out of there? Oh, him? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.